Okay, well, welcome everyone. Welcome to Sunday Morning with Twitchy Women. And I'm very excited to have my new internet friend, Richelle Flanagan, join us today to talk about the app that she has developed called My Moves Matter. And let me tell you a little bit about Richelle before we go on. She's a registered dietitian, and she lives in Dublin, Ireland. So she's joining us. What time is it there? 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, something like that.
6 o'clock, yeah.
Okay. And she was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's shortly after the birth of her second child. She's an ambassador for the World Parkinson Congress in Barcelona, and is particularly passionate about two areas: the importance of diet for Parkinson's, and the unmet needs of women with Parkinson's, which is also a passion of mine. She is a co-founder of the Women's Parkinson's Project and co-founder of a digital health startup, My Moves Matter, and which is a digital self-care companion to empower people with Parkinson's to live better lives. And I'm going to turn it over to Richelle. She's going to talk to you about this wonderful project. So go ahead, Richelle, go ahead.
Okay.
It's all yours.
Thanks. One second.
Are you having trouble? There you go.
No, there we go now.
Okay.
Let's go from the beginning. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks a million, everyone, for coming along on a Sunday morning to listen to me, and thank you very much, Sharon, for inviting me on. So as you mentioned, I've been on this journey in developing a digital app to empower women with Parkinson's to live their best lives. And I suppose, the reason this journey started was that really as we all know, the Parkinson's disease image does not really reflect the real world experience, that 4 out of 10 people with Parkinson's are women around the world. And in fact, in Asian countries, there's a higher proportion of women with Parkinson's than men. And yet we haven't seen much research as to why that is. And then in terms of age-wise, 3 out of 10 of people with Parkinson's are under the age of 60. That's more than the total number of people with MS in the world. But everyone's sort of more familiar with MS being associated with a younger age group, but not so with Parkinson's. And the other thing as well is that, so of the 10 million that we think that are around the world living with Parkinson's, say 4 million are women under the age of 60. And obviously in terms of, that's under the age of 60. So there's, a lot more over the age of 60 as well. We tend to, as women as well, take longer to get diagnosed than men. Our Parkinson's symptoms are heavily impacted by hormones, the menstrual cycle, pregnancy, and the menopausal transition. There's no clinical guidelines how to adjust medications around hormone fluctuations in life. Women tend to end in nursing homes earlier than men with Parkinson's. We suffer more drug side effects, and we do not actually get referred as often to neurologists as men do with Parkinson's. And once we do get referred, we tend to not get to see them as often, and we're not referred for advanced therapies as often, such as DBS. So there's a number of things that are where we're not getting treated the same as men with Parkinson's at the moment. And just in terms of going through some of the sort of surveys and research that we've done. So when I noticed myself that my own Parkinson's symptoms got worse around my menstrual cycle, and some of you will have heard this before, but I did a survey of women with Parkinson's around the world, and it showed that the women were experiencing the same thing as I, which was that 85% of women were noticing that their Parkinson's symptoms got worse the week before their period, and 48% noticed that it got worse during the week of their period. But when we asked, whether their neurologists actually engage with them around the hormonal impacts on Parkinson's, basically less than 5 to 10% of the women said that their neurologist talked to them about impact of hormones and Parkinson's, adjusted the medication around their menstrual cycles, suggested HRT, or discussed about the impact of the menopausal transition and Parkinson's symptoms. So less than 5 to 10% of the women said that neurologists actually discussed any of this with them. And then subsequent to that survey, which was done by myself as a co-founder of the Women's Project, but also as a PD Avenger. But then there was a group in Spain who actually took the survey that I did and actually did one in Spain and published results around it, and it'll be presented at the World Parkinson's Congress. And they basically did a survey, and they had 126 women in the cohort, and interestingly enough, 64 were of reproductive age. That was quite a high proportion. It was 50% of the women they surveyed. But what's of interest here is they kind of looked at were symptoms different between, you know, premenopausal and postmenopausal, and they found two particular areas that were different between pre and postmenopausal women with Parkinson's. First one was constipation. So you can see here, basically constipation got worse as it got towards postmenopause, and the urinary urgency got worse as it went towards postmenopause. So obviously, these are two things that are non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's, but also they are impacted by the drop in estrogen. So estrogen actually impacts your bowel movements, and it also impacts your urinary kind of continence as such as well. So it's not entirely surprising that those were kind of different, because obviously the difference between a menopausal and a postmenopausal woman is the drop in estrogen. So, you know, estrogen has a real impact on us women, as we know. And then when they specifically analysed the women who are still in the reproductive age, it was very similar to the results in my own survey, so showing that 67% of the women reported change in their symptoms during their menstrual cycle. 68%, there was a higher percentage during the week of their period than in the survey I did. But also it showed that almost 40% indicated that their medication was less effective during their menstrual cycle, which obviously is you know, very important, because we use the medication to manage our symptoms. And what was very interesting was that 50% of the women diagnosed before or during pregnancy noted a worsening of their symptoms. So it's actually quite a high percentage of women who were diagnosed. And I myself picked up my Parkinson's when I was 3 months pregnant. And there was a question about Parkinson's being a potentially sort of inflammatory condition. And so it's a bit like when women, you know, post having their babies often develop thyroid disease, so underactive thyroid. So it's kind of triggered by the hormonal sort of fluctuations. So for example, after my first child, my celiac disease appeared, which is an autoimmune kind of inflammatory process. So the question is, you know, is there something going on with regard to the hormones that triggers Parkinson's in some women who might be more susceptible? And then also in terms of the survey here, so the 20-25% of women found that their symptoms were worse in the transition to their menopause. So there's definitely something going on in the interaction between our hormones and Parkinson's. And then there was a survey done on the Michael J. Fox Insight research platform. So they kindly agreed through the connection with Sonia Mather, who's on their patient advisory board, to do a number of surveys around women with Parkinson's. So they've had 3,000, I think that's number has increased, but 3,000 women with Parkinson's. The highest number have been postmenopausal, and actually the sort of early sort of pre and peri have actually been quite low. So this is a very low number. For example, in the Spanish study, they managed to recruit 50% of the women were premenopausal, but in the study in the Michael J. Fox study here, it's only, you know, I think it was 3 or 4%. So we definitely need to get more women onto the MJ Fox platform to fill in the surveys. So what they showed was that only 20% of women in this survey, in the MJ Fox survey, are asked about their menstrual cycle or their menopause by their movement disorder specialist or neurologist. So again, very low numbers. But also it showed that 50% of American women, or the majority of people on the MJ Fox survey, are Americans, but 50% did not bring up the topic because they feel they're dismissed, there isn't time, or the doctor isn't knowledgeable. So this is obviously a big concern, because if we don't raise it, we can't change it. The other thing that the survey showed is that self-image is negatively impacted by Parkinson's. That's what women feel, and the research does back that up. They feel that motor symptoms have the greatest impact, that their sort of socialization in terms of, socializing and are impacted by these self-image issues. And then more recently, I did an online survey around women and Parkinson's and menopause in association with a neurologist in the UK who was doing the survey kind of locally. And then she asked, could we sort of do a broader survey? And this survey showed, again, we asked the question during the perimenopause and menopause, did you or did you not notice whether your symptoms were improving or worsening? So you'll see here that a very small percentage said that they improved, but there was about 30% who said that their Parkinson's symptoms got worse around their transition. And there was like a 67% weren't sure. And that's like a pretty large number that we don't know the answers to. And this was, we asked in terms of what symptoms did women, when they were transitioning through the menopause, they noticed were worsening. So you'll see the tremor was worse, the stiffness and rigidity, anxiety and sleep were the kind of worsened, symptoms, but a lot of them were triggered worse. And then we asked in terms of if you've taken HRT, did you think that it had a positive effect on your Parkinson's symptoms? So you see here, there's, quite a high percentage there, 45% said yes. There was about 20% said no. And then again, about 20% weren't too sure. But in the survey, which was quite interesting, that only 10% of the women in the survey, of which there was 165 women from around the world, only 10% actually took HRT. And when you compare that to the population, the normal population, it's normally, well, it depends on what country, but in the US, it's like 30% that would take HRT in the normals. In the UK, it's maybe 15 to 20%, depending on what. In Ireland, it's 30% of the population of women in that sort of transition phase take HRT. So it seems to indicate that women with Parkinson's are not taking HRT at the same level as, the population of women who don't have Parkinson's. So the question is that because it's not been asked about, women aren't asking their neurologists about it, or they've been dismissed, or there's not enough research and people are afraid to take it. We don't know, but we need to start finding out more. So in terms of, again, asking the question in the survey, has your neurologist at any stage discussed with you about perimenopause, menopause and the impact on your Parkinson's symptoms, or has your neurologist discussed HRT? 5% basically was, so only 5% of the women had these conversations with their neurologist. So that's shocking. And just because you're a neurologist, I don't think means that you have to ignore the fact that, women have different, pretty, massive change in their life, and pretty much, very timed around a lot of women getting diagnosed with Parkinson's. So these were some of the quotes that kind of came back. So you'll see here, I read research about the protective effects of HRT recently and had a discussion with GP and started HRT. So GP in the UK would be like a PCP in the US. She said, it would have been better to start 5 years ago. I already feel hugely better. It isn't routinely discussed, and they rely on the patient being informed and asking for it. And then another woman here said, hormonal fluctuations have had a huge impact on my general health. My Parkinson's, it's taken me 2 years to understand the fluctuations and be able to manage them. And to say the last 2 years have been a nightmare has been an understatement. So question in terms of whether the hormones have been having a huge impact for this woman, we don't know. There's also the point here is this woman says, hard to know which symptoms are from which issue, because Parkinson's symptoms and menopause symptoms are actually quite similar. So that's why sometimes I think they get dismissed. And then there's one, I do feel the menopause had and still had a huge impact on my Parkinson's, but there's still no information or anyone to discuss it with. When I've been asked about contradictions, I've been told no, there's no available information. in terms of the menopause as well, it does affect how medications work. It doesn't work, but the doctors in the US don't seem to believe me. And then this woman here started HRT and felt fabulous. Parkinson's symptoms improved too. Feel there's definitely a relationship between. So, and that was just a few examples of the comments that came back. So in terms of all the surveys that we did and some webinars, we decided to write a paper, and you've had Indu Subramanian on talking about this paper, and I was a co-author on it. And it was about sort of raising the issues that, that women need, different approaches to our care. And I suppose picking out from that paper, we sort of highlighted sort of key aspects that we need to improve on. And one is tracking. So being able to design a tool to enable women to communicate with their healthcare providers to help improve symptom tracking, including things like menstrual cycles and including things like going through the perimenopause, menopause, and also postmenopause as well. Developing tools to facilitate discussion of hormonal factors to empower women to bring up the topics with their providers, so to have the evidence to share, because often, when you go and you only get to see someone once a year, then you can't remember what it was and you get flustered because you've only got a short amount of time. The other thing is to enable to recognize what specific motor symptoms you're experiencing. Some people don't often know the difference between, say, whether there's dystonic or their dyskinesia or their tremor, and whether it's an on or off dyskinesia, the various different symptoms. And also then in terms of non-motor symptoms, being able to actually express that in terms of, anxiety, depression, which women tend to suffer from more, the urinary issues, the constipation, etc., so that the treatment can be more personalized. So by tracking it, and some of you would have been given like a diary with some of your neurologists, it helps them to actually tailor the treatment better. And obviously as well, from a treatment point of view, when you track it, it enables them, I say, to customize, but also in terms of women. So there's been research, and I've sort of been saying this for quite a while now, that I can never understand why, my, height and weight, that I'm given exactly the same levodopa treatment as a man who's 6 foot and, 100 kg. It just doesn't make sense. And research has come out recently showing that women absorb levodopa 28% more than men do. So what that does is, so women suffer more from dystonia and dyskinesia, which are both side effects of medications. So obviously dystonia is a symptom, dyskinesia is a side effect of medication. And women have basically greater absorption rates of levodopa. So when women absorb more of the levodopa, it can create this dyskinesia. And when you're dyskinetic, it burns energy. And when you burn energy, you lose weight. And when you lose weight, you absorb more levodopa. So it becomes this vicious circle. And what happens is you're just, put on more levodopa, and that just causes more dyskinesia, and then you lose more weight, and it just, goes around and around in circles. So again, this is why tracking your weight as well, and showing that you've lost weight, and if you've noticed your symptoms getting worse since you've lost weight. So for example, I had a lady I know who's become a friend with Parkinson's, and she was very dystonic, and I was kind of thinking there's something strange going on there, and she mentioned that she'd lost quite a lot of weight, and she was on an awful high dose of levodopa medication, but she subsequently kind of weaned herself down off less of that, and things are improving. So I suppose it's about actually, and I suppose this is why I'm sort of developing this app, is, as a dietitian, I see with people with cancer or diabetes or heart disease, there's much more personalized care, and people are given tools to empower themselves more. In Parkinson's, I feel that's been really missing. So it's about sort of learning about your own body and noticing, rather than waiting and suffering worse symptoms while you're waiting to see a neurologist in 6 months' time, is actually being able to see what's going on sooner. And also, that enables you, the more information you have, to the ability to build more trusting relationship with your healthcare provider, that you have evidence and they have to listen to it because they can't refute, ink on paper. And also in terms of the importance of referring you to, SLT or, a dietitian, in terms of being able to see when you track your symptoms, it'll be a trigger maybe to get you referred to the right therapist. And then the other aspect is in terms of self-care, helping to guide better lifestyle choices in diet, in exercise, as we know, in mind, body, and in social connection, and having self-care strategies that you can put in place, knowing what works for you. And for example, as was mentioned, I'm a registered dietitian. I just had a survey I have 2 students who are working with me at the moment from the University College Cork, and they have put out a survey, and it's really interesting in terms of 86% of people with Parkinson's have never been referred to a dietitian, and about the same percentage never asked for referral for a dietitian. So on one aspect, the healthcare providers are not referring, so they don't understand the importance. And the other hand is the person with Parkinson's doesn't understand the importance of diet. And in terms of survey, it was quite noticeable that there's a lot of things that people could do to improve their diet. So we'll be sharing that information at the World Parkinson's Congress, and we'll be sharing it through the Facebook groups and that I put the survey out to, because I think it's really important for people to learn about diet, because there's definite signs that in particular the Mediterranean style diet has potential to slow progression like exercise has, but we need more research in that area. But again, by tracking yourself in terms of what you're doing dietary wise, and it doesn't mean doing it every day. As a dietitian, I would often with clients say, just track yourself for 3 or 4 days, including weekend, because often we eat differently the weekend during the week, and then compare it to what you should be eating, and then you start to see where you need to make some changes. So in terms of, I suppose, coming back to the app, the whole idea is that it's a kind of digital self-care companion. So it allows you to track your medication, because we do know that 60% of people with Parkinson's are not adherent to the medication. And for a condition that is really dependent on one's medication, on average, 96% of people with Parkinson's are on medications at least 3 times a day. And the medications are very important for managing our symptoms. If we're not adherent to it, then that's obviously going to make things worse for us. And then looking at triggers, so things like the period, so also looking at things like exercise, does exercise help, to improve your symptoms more when you don't exercise? Does sleep trigger? An awful lot of people would, report that lack of sleep will make their symptoms worse, stress, etc. And so the idea is, by tracking yourself and it's not all the time every day, but it's, at periods of time to actually stand back and look, okay, something's not working for me, or to be able to see, well, this is working for me. So to see patterns and what works and what doesn't work for you, so that you can take more control back of the condition. And ultimately as well, through the app, we want to deliver health education programs like a nutrition program, for example, and get access to health professionals, because we know there's a real problem getting access, and ultimately to have community to support advocacy, and like what Sharon is doing, supporting those communities out there already, and helping to drive research for people with Parkinson's in a personalized way, in terms of looking at women and what are the issues in women, looking at men, what are the issues in men. So ultimately, in terms of, the app is looking at helping to improve medication adherence, which ultimately is going to improve living with Parkinson's, because if you're following the medication properly, helping to facilitate behavior change by actually learning what's working and what's not working, enabling shared decision-making, so that you've got information that you can share with your health provider, whether it's the neurologist or whether it's your physio or your speech therapist. And also then to increase self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is basically how confident you feel managing your Parkinson's. And it's something that I've really noticed with Parkinson's, is that it's, when people, I do a callback service for the Parkinson's Association here in Ireland, a dietitian one, and I really feel that when people go to see the neurologist, it's quite a disabling conversation. It is, you've got Parkinson's, it's a neurodegenerative progressive disorder, here's some pills. And there's no enabling conversation about, here is, it's a neurodegenerative condition, but it's a slow progressing one in the main. We know that exercise is, very impactful. So I'm going to, send you off prescription to go and do an exercise class. We also know the diet is very important, and you need to time your medication, et cetera, so that you get these sort of supportive, tools. So I know as a dietitian working with people with diabetes, over the years, that it's very similar to Parkinson's in the concept that with diabetes, you lack insulin. So you have to replace it. So like Parkinson's, we lack dopamine, we have to replace it. And with diabetes, you'll be told that you have to exercise, you have to watch your diet to help, keep your living long with diabetes, and to avoid things like having to lose a leg and amputate because you haven't been looking after blood sugars. So similarly in terms of Parkinson's, but that conversation is not had, I think, on a regular basis with people with Parkinson's. Some do, who are lucky to be with the Movement Disorder Centre that has multidisciplinary access, but not everybody has that. So in terms of the application itself, it's about, tracking your neurological Parkinson's symptoms across things like the menstrual cycle. And it's the first app to actually do that. We will also be looking at doing exercise and sleep and hopefully diet. It is very much a neuro-friendly design in terms of we designed this with women with Parkinson's from the very beginning, talking about it's so hard to actually interact with the phone when your symptoms are off. So we have big buttons, and we have voice. You can use videos and voice to log your symptoms when your symptoms are worse, because obviously that's potentially when you might be logging them. So it's about trying to improve the health outcomes. So I'm just going to show you here. There's a little demo of the app. It's on both the App Store, the Apple Store, and the Google Play. But at the moment, when you download it, you have to actually register on our website, mymovesmatter.com, and then we add you onto the platform so that you can actually get into the app at the moment. And that's how it works. So I'm just going to show you here. So basically, you can track your medication. So you can also add, there's hormones on their medication as well. You can also track your symptoms. So you'll see here, you can actually do the severity level. It's time-stamped, and you can also do a voice note, a photo or a video. And also it shows you here that you can actually log your symptoms several times a day, because as we know, our symptoms basically fluctuate throughout the day. So you see, it can be moderate in the morning, can be severe later on, and that's really important for us to understand the pattern during the day. So it could be because your medication, food timing, it could be because you exercised too much. It could be that you had a really bad night's sleep the night before. It's trying to sort of get an idea of what that pattern is. And you can also attach a kind of log a note to your symptom when you log it. So you can log your periods if you're still menstruating, so that you can actually start to see a pattern between your period and your Parkinson's symptoms. So you can type in a little note with that, anything that you log. And so you'll see here, there's also a function within the app that you can add journal entries. So any symptom you log, any medication you log, any menstrual symptom you log, you can actually put a little video with it. You can put a little picture. So for an example here, so one of my biggest symptoms is micrographia. So what I did was I actually, wrote a little sentence, and I took a picture of it and I put it up on the app. So I was actually able to see the difference between my handwriting when my medication was on and when it was going off. So I was able to actually move my medication timing so that I didn't have to wait as long, to be able to write properly again. So I actually was able to tailor it more to myself. And also more recently, I've been doing voice therapy, in particular, sort of in with WPC coming up, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. And I've always had a kind of a hoarse voice, and it's definitely part of the Parkinson's. And what I've been able to do is I've been able to take a video of myself before I've done the voice therapy and a video after. And it's actually, I've been quite astounded how improved my voice has been doing the voice exercises that she's given to me. So the app is that's really motivated me to actually do it more, because I actually was able to replay it back to myself and go, wow, that is a difference. So that's been, I'm still finding ways that the journal has been useful for myself. So then the other thing is that the app actually gives you a summary then, so you can see your period in relation to your Parkinson's symptoms and your medication. You can drill down on a daily basis there. So you can see here, it shows you what time you took your medication, when you took them on time, and what your severity of your symptoms were like. So the idea is that you will be able to see a pattern, whether it's in relation to exercise or sleep or your period or your menopausal symptoms, whatever the trigger might be. That is the idea, so that you'll be able to see a pattern yourself, so that you can do something about it, or that your clinician can actually do something in terms of maybe adjusting your medication if that's what needs to be done. So that's just a little example of the app. And then in terms of this whole application has been designed by women with Parkinson's, for women with Parkinson's. We had focus groups, workshops, interviews with women with Parkinson's neurologists. And also we developed the app. We asked women to sort of test it along the way with us and feedback. So this is some of the comments some of the women have said. So great to see the meds and symptoms all in the calendar view. Another lady said, my neurologist always asks me if I see any patterns, but I always forget. So this is useful because it keeps it logged for me. Merging my Parkinson's symptoms with my menstrual and menopause symptoms is so helpful to discern a pattern. Love being able to post a photo. So when you enter your meds, you can put a photo in. So I know myself, I've gone on holidays and I've forgotten some of my meds. I've had to go into a pharmacy and then I can't remember what the meds are. So I have to contact the chemist in Ireland to send fax over, where now I have it all on the app. So if I ever forget, I'll have it in the phone. And then another one that said I like during the journal entries because I can put good and bad thoughts, comments about my Parkinson's. So the journal, and personally as well, I find it really useful. And it was because I was using a sort of journal app before that I liked to incorporate it in this app, because it allows you to sort of just put a little bit more detail about what's going on for you at any particular time. And have that, saved. And then also, obviously, a big part of it is this neuroaccessibility in terms of being able to engage with the app when your hands aren't working. So being able to use voice or video has been a very welcome feature of the application. And we did a survey of women before we developed the app, and there were some key findings, that 62% forgot or sometimes forget to take their medications, which replicates, what the studies show, which is absolutely astounding that is the case, that 60% of people are not adherent to their medications of Parkinson's, when it's a condition that really needs people to be adherent. Almost 80% want more ownership of their condition, want to be empowered. 91% want to reduce the fluctuations of their symptoms, try to even out, so you're not waiting for, an hour to turn on. Almost 100% wanted to understand if any of the symptoms were related to their medications. So was it a side effect of their medications? Almost 90% wanted a symptom severity summary to show their neurologist. Over 90% wanted to participate in research studies tailored to them, because we just don't have enough research tailored to women. And the top 4 items they wanted to see in an app were the symptom tracking, the tailored expert information, research studies tailored to them, and summary of some symptom fluctuations. So we basically have tried to very much design to what the women have asked for. The other thing that we're doing is we're partnering with experts. So basically women are not getting treated in terms of their hormonal needs around their menstrual cycle or the perimenopause. Also, women are not being told about the fact that they're potentially, taking, if you've got dyskinesia, the question is it to do with your body weight? And are you, does it need to be reduced? Also, if you're dyskinetic, things like if you take, so we sort of advise people generally to take your medication separate to your meals. But if you're someone who's dyskinetic, that could make your symptoms worse, because obviously you take it separate to your meals, you absorb more of it, so you become more dyskinetic. So it might be that some people actually need to take it with their meals, or they need to have less levodopa and take it separate to their meals. So this is where the personalization is really important. Because dyskinesia, I kind of feel a lot of people are possibly ramping up through their meds quicker than they should be, because a lot of these underlying issues are not being sort of dealt with in terms of their diet, in terms of constipation, in terms of absorption issues in women, etc. But anyway, so in order to kind of basically prove what women are experiencing, we are planning to do a pilot trial of 100 young onset women through the Radboud University with Dr. Bart Post, and also through University of Cork with a professor there who's a neuroscientific researcher, to actually trial women using the app so that we can, A, test the usability of it, but B, to actually, for the women to be able to track and prove that it is happening, that their periods are coinciding with worsening Parkinson's symptoms. The idea is that we need to have more prospective evidence so the clinical guidelines can be written, because we know that some women are being given, say, extra levodopa, which is helping around their periods, or been put on the oral contraceptive pill without a break, and that's helping their symptoms. But there's no coordinated guidance. Also then, with regard to Franz Parkinson, with an eminent professor, Elena Morrow, we applied for Franz Parkinson's grant, also to look at women and hormonal issues. And I'm delighted to say that that's looking very positive. That'll be a study in France. So we're beginning to see a little bit, but this is not happening. This is happening because I'm sort of trying to push the agenda around it. There's very little research going on in terms of women and Parkinson's around, pre, peri, and post-menopause. And also I've applied for a grant application with my old professor in nutrition here in Ireland. She's in Northern Ireland, with regard to developing a sort of a nutrition education program for people with Parkinson's. And looking to deliver that through an app or through a website or whatever down the line, but hoping that will be successful, because really we need a lot more information to get out to people with Parkinson's, men and women in that case of nutrition. And also just to say, in terms of postmenopause, I started off with premenopause, I went through perimenopause, so I kind of researched that, but there's also gaps in terms of care for postmenopausal women in terms of their needs that need to be addressed in terms of specific research as well. And I suppose just explain in terms of the development roadmap around this is that, for the World Parkinson Congress at the moment, we just have the period and the perimenopausal sort of symptoms from a hormonal, but we're looking to include exercise and sleep, that you'll be able to track and compare, how do your symptoms, do when you exercise or when you get better sleep. Hopefully eventually be able to diet. It's a bit more tricky in terms of developing the app. We wanted to help to drive community, so to highlight the likes of Sharon's great network in terms of the whole mentoring support, because that's just so important, so that women can actually know where to go. So we want to highlight that so they can find women both online and offline, because that came back quite strongly through the original surveys that we did, and also to give access to experts in terms of dietitians, physios, to be able to answer questions, have core programs that people can do, and potentially do telehealth. And then obviously, as I mentioned there, I'm trying to kind of get grant applications so that we can get some research done. And so that ultimately, coming back to my point earlier on, is that, so when you go and see, when you're diagnosed, when you go to see a neurologist, you're not just told it's neurodegenerative, progressive disorder, go and sort your life out. It's actually, you can live with this, you can live well with this, here is your medication, but here is also some digital therapeutics and access to a dietitian, access to, cognitive behavior therapy remotely, because we know that we can't access a lot of these services because there's such a demand and they can't fill it. That's the big vision. So the journey at the moment, I've funded all of this through grants and that I've got here in Ireland, and I'm looking to raise the next sort of raise of money in some shape or form, because it's not cheap to actually build this technology. So I'm looking at the moment here in Ireland for other options in terms of getting funding to drive it forward. And in terms of the team, there's myself, and I have a co-founder who is Renee Reinbacher. He's based in Switzerland. We actually met on a hackathon. Basically, this whole idea came from, I was asked to take part as a patient champion, and I took part as someone with Parkinson's, and I sort of said, look, I want to develop this app. And we won the hackathon, and we got, originally they were going to give us 5,000 as the prize fund, but they tripled it because they really thought, they'd like to see the app developed. So that was like over a year ago. And we have a kind of clinical and research advisory group of fantastic neurologists and other clinicians, and we also have a number of women with Parkinson's sort of as an advisory board capacity as well, who've been sort of feeding in along the way. So as you can see, it's very much focused on women with Parkinson's. So there's a say if the app is on the app stores, but in order to get it at the moment, if you go onto my website, which is mymoosematter.com, and go to the get the app, and if you sign up, then I register you and you can have a play away and see what you do. And I'll be looking for feedback from women in terms of what things we can improve, what they like, what they don't like, and very much involving you in sort of the next steps of development. So that's, in the end, I think, yep, that's it there. So I'll stop sharing. I see there's things in the chat, but I haven't been keeping an eye on it.
Thank you so much, Richelle. This is great. We have a lot of questions. I think a lot of them were already addressed. Let's see. Let's skip the first couple. Does the patient bring this to the doctor, or is the doctor able to sign in with permission?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So at the moment, because we're very sort of early stage, and as I say, it costs money to develop all the various different parts. But so at the moment, you will be able to just bring it into your neurologist and show them. But we are planning to actually have it such that your neurologist can actually access. And again, it would be with permission, or it might be a report. So we're going to be doing some sort of focus group work with neurologists to see what way would be useful for them, because we don't over flood them with too much data either. So it's what's going to be the most useful to them. But certainly when we did the original focus group, they really liked the summary that we'd shown them. So we're going to go back to them now and say, right, well, how would you like it to be shown, or to access it? So it's definitely in the pipeline, is what I'd say. But in the interim, you can show it to your neurologist yourself.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, so a few people have said they've signed up already, and they're waiting for the activation. So I guess that'll happen later today.
Yeah. So if you signed up while we were talking earlier today, I'll do it after the webinar tonight and get you on.
Okay. Eileen asked if you're looking to link the app to fitness trackers like Apple and Fitbit.
Yeah, absolutely. We do want to do that, but we kind of wanted to kind of get the kind of basis right first, that was the what we were tracking, because again, it costs money to connect to these various different, but it is in the pipeline to have that, so that people can connect with various different connectables. Yeah.
Okay, and same question about the Empower app as part of their research. We would be linking with them.
I don't know. I know that's a kind of research project, all right. So I think it's kind of like an app in its own right. So, but I'll certainly look into it.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? That's all I have in the chat. So I'm going to open it up to questions for a few minutes. Anybody have questions they would like to ask Richelle? Questions, comments? Somebody, anybody, raise your hand, just talk.
I downloaded the app a couple of weeks ago, and it's really easy to use, and I love that we can video and voice record. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks a million. That's really, really heartening to hear, because when you're on this journey,
Yeah, I sent you an email a couple of weeks ago when I first downloaded it, and you sent me.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much. It's just super easy.
Oh, I'm delighted to hear that. That's fantastic. And I'm because you'd only just kind of downloaded, so you've used it now for a little bit, and you still find it useful.
Yeah, just a couple days. But once my summer vacation hits, I'll be using it more.
Yeah. And I mean, the one thing I would say about it as well is, sometimes people think they have to track all the time, but it's you can use it when you're going through a bad patch, or usually that's probably when you most, kind of go, well, what's going on? So as I say, as a dietitian, I would often say to people when they're trying to say, change dietary habits, whether it's IBS or weight loss, is to track themselves for a period of time. And that's, really shows you a lot yourself. And, if you're going to say coming up to an appointment with your neurologist as well, is to track yourself for the week before. So you have that information to hand. And the other thing is the journal is just really handy, on a daily basis, just plugging in, oh, I noticed this or I noticed that you can refer back to. So not to be sort of put off by, oh, I have to track all the time. It's not meant to sort of, be a kind of an annoyance.
Yeah, I found it very easy to use as well. Okay, Farrell, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I've been using it too. And I'm someone that normally keeps a diary when things get, when things get kind of funky. But I really appreciate, and I have a Fitbit, but I really appreciate the ability to kind of really enter these things in daily. So thank you for developing this. And I am excited about the plans for the future. It all sounds exciting. I look forward to when there's a sleep and a diet and an exercise component, but I understand now that you explained it, why it's a slower process. But thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and give me that feedback. That's really great to hear. Thank you.
I'd find myself taking videos and photos when I'm having off times to send to my neurologist. And this is so great because it's just in that one spot and I don't have to go through all my photos and find the right one to send it.
Exactly. And that was kind of, and that kind of came back from the focus group we did. There was actually a single mom who's really dyskinetic, and she said, like, I can't hold a phone when I'm that dyskinetic. But she said and she said it'd be great if my daughter was able to take the video of me, so that was really one of the key drivers, is realizing that, obviously the hardest time to log with the phone is when our symptoms are the worst. So yes, it's really, I'm delighted to hear that that's been useful.
Diana has a comment.
Yes, I have a comment about postmenopausal, and I think that I still cycle through hormones and notice that my sleep is worse during what I would have been my period, the week before my period. I wondered if there'd been any research on postmenopausal and what we're still cycling through in terms of hormones.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. There hasn't, to be honest, like there's a real dearth of research in women and hormones in general, as you know, with the whole sort of menopause kind of, craze that's out there at the moment around HRT, et cetera. It's great to see there's a real focus on it. So I think in general, we need more information about hormones and how they impact women. But then with Parkinson's, it's really fascinating. So in terms of the women's symptoms getting worse before their menstrual cycle, their period rather, is to do with their estrogen dropping causes dopamine to drop. And so they're very actually related, dopamine and estrogen. And we also know that women tend to be diagnosed more postmenopausally. So they think it is because obviously they're losing the estrogen. So, it is interesting. Like, I don't know exactly what, percentage of estrogen we're left with, and does that have some kind of impact in terms of the Parkinson's, in the neurotransmitters? And also we don't know in terms of testosterone and progesterone what impacts they are still having in terms of Parkinson's. So I mean, the answer, sorry, is I don't know, but I think there probably is more. And I think in terms of postmenopausal, why do some women not develop Parkinson's postmenopausally and some women do? And is that something to do with differences in hormones, not just estrogen? So unfortunately I don't have any answers for you, but I think it's a watch this space. And also for those of you who are interested, there's a great there's an amazing researcher, oh god, now her name is going to go out of my head, but there's a book. She's Italian, but she's based in Lisa Mosconi is her name, and she researches specifically into Alzheimer's research, but obviously with Parkinson's, dementia is part of the potential picture. But she has a book called The XX Brain, which is really well worth reading in terms of both menopausal and postmenopausal, in terms of the importance in terms of protecting the brain from dementia. So that's definitely something that I think is worth for both the menopausal and postmenopausal on this call to consider reading.
Okay. Can you put those in the chat for me, Richelle?
Yeah, I will.
Ah, Ashlyn's ahead of you, I think.
She
Okay.
got it.
Any other questions? Comments? Everything that was, I think we've answered everything in the chat. Oh,
Do any of you
Julia,
just sorry.
go ahead.
I was going to say, do any of you, have many of you lost weight or many of you dyskinetic? You know, do any of you sort of recognize that issue that I mentioned? Yeah, Frances, she's got her hand up to ask, or
Well,
yeah.
I eat a lot, but I'm very
Mhm.
aware that I really feel that my condition is burning calories constantly.
Yeah.
And so I eat and I don't gain weight. And I've also kind of noticed, I think I mentioned this to Sharon, that it seems like the people that I see that have Parkinson's are not heavy. And I was wondering whether that was because of the kind of movement and the burning of calories that comes with that.
Yeah. Well,
but I do have
certainly,
dyskinesia.
Yeah. So the dyskinesia definitely, uses an awful lot of energy. And, if I say you're losing weight, that can then be worsened because the levodopa will be absorbed more than usual when you lose weight. Women tend to be of a lower body weight with Parkinson's. And also, in general, there seems to be a kind of a profile of kind of more, thin. And there is something about the metabolism of fats in Parkinson's that we don't metabolize them properly. So there is research kind of going on into that area as well. So it's an area that I'm really interested in because it's something I noticed that, there's a certain look to people with Parkinson's. It's almost kind of cachexic. It's, quite sinewy, quite sort of not much fat, but quite muscly, if you know what I mean. So a little bit wasted, and there is quite a lot of wasting in Parkinson's. So that's why I'm really keen on driving the research into nutrition as well, is because I think it's been a totally neglected area in Parkinson's. And I think nutrition and diet could have a huge impact on people with Parkinson's. So watch the space. There's actually going to be a study day I'm taking part in with the Cure Parkinson's Trust to look at this whole area around nutrition and Parkinson's. So hopefully we'll see more happening there.
Fantastic.
That would be wonderful. We need more information about diet and Parkinson's. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have another app that I was using, and it allowed me to sync to my iPhone, and I would leave it on all day. And when it would record dyskinesia as workouts quite often, and I'd burn a ton of calories.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like I exercised. I was just exhausted, I guess, from the dyskinesia.
Yeah.
But it was
it
really interesting when all of a sudden it would indicate that I was exercising and I'm in bed.
Yeah, but that's really fascinating, and like, it's really important to actually know that that's happening, because I say, and then noticing in terms of whether you're losing weight or not, whether you're losing muscle or fat, and is that affecting your medication absorption? As I mentioned as well, then if you were keeping your meds separate to your meals and you're still on the same, you could be actually absorbing more levodopa than, and that's exacerbating the dyskinesia. That's a potential there. So that's why the personalization is really important, to be able to kind of define that. So in terms of diabetes, for example, we would give people diaries with, who are on pumps, and they would actually adjust their medication, themselves, dependent on the sugar content. It's much more nuanced, but in Parkinson's, it's not, unfortunately. Not yet, anyway.
All right. Dorianne has a question, and that's going to be the last one, and then we're going to move on. So go ahead, unmute yourself. You're muted.
Are you talking to me?
No, Dorianne, you had your hand up? You need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Oh, hi, I'm Dorian Caldwell. I don't know if the app can ever be used to this, but recently I'm in a clinical trial, and the researcher told me that it's a good idea to exercise also without your meds. and to get some extra, and I don't know if you could ever, track certain things about exercising with your meds and exercising without your meds and
Yeah.
what it's supposed, but I don't know. Is anyone here what that's supposed to do for you? Not to take your
So,
meds?
yeah, I mean, certainly in terms of the app, that's the part of the idea as well, is that you'll be able to track. So, for example, if you start a new medication, you can track, well, did I notice that, that medication helped me or it didn't help me, made me worse or better? Same with exercise. I exercised, I did this particular, program of exercise. Did it improve my symptoms or did it not? In terms of exercising without meds, generally the advice is not to exercise without meds because you need your meds to switch on your muscles. So you can be more prone to injury.
Yeah,
Because if you're rigid without your meds, you can be rigid and you
that's
can injure
absolutely,
yourself.
yeah.
So,
I
so
have to ask more about that.
yeah. So, I mean, certainly exercise can help you produce some of your own dopamine, but depending on the level of exercise, so if someone's like, doing a marathon running, they actually need to have more levodopa, not less, because they're using up so much of their own and they're using up the levodopa that they're taking. So sometimes they would be given extra levodopa. So again, it depends on the situation, but certainly my understanding is that you would not exercise without your meds.
Yeah,
Some
that's
people
strange.
wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I maybe ask him a little bit more as to why. Is it something to do with the trial you're on, or the medication that you're on that means that you can, or there's some reason he's
I'm just on
suggesting that.
levodopa and pramipexole, which I want
Yeah.
to get
So
off pramipexole. I hate it. This
yeah.
Mirapex.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd maybe just put it back to him, as to why he suggested that. I just noticed there as well, a lot of people saying that you gained weight. Yes, there are quite a lot of people who gain weight with Parkinson's. It is, just you mentioned there, pramipexole. So one of the biggest culprits would be an agonist, can lead to sort of impulse control issues. So in terms of, overeating, also in terms of, just to watch out, cravings are quite common. So when you fluctuate in your levodopa, so as you're kind of coming off, you kind of, your non-motor symptoms like your cognition, your concentration, your mood. Well, it's a bit like when people have a low blood sugar and they look for something sugary. It's a bit the same for people with Parkinson's. They kind of crave something to kind of pick the energy up. It's kind of that, dopamine is basically a sort of an addiction type neurotransmitter. It's what motivates it. So food kind of feeds that area. So particularly sort of sugary kind of foods. So just again, like when you track yourself, to actually see, if you track yourself over a number of days and see, well, do I tend to snack when my meds are going off? And then you start to see the pattern perhaps, and then it's about planning in,
That's
a
interesting.
healthier snack instead. So, that's a key thing in terms of DBS. Absolutely. People post DBS gain between 5 and 10 kilos of weight. And that's not really shared with many. There was one woman who actually said to a dietitian in the UK who was looking after DBS patients that she would have rather not have DBS because she put on so much weight.
Oh my gosh, that's what I'm there. That's another thing. They're looking at me for at U of M DBS, and I'm just thinking about it. I don't want to put on a lot of weight. I don't want to put on any weight.
Yeah, so it's just being aware of that and then planning for it, so really someone should have, if you're going to do DBS, you should get access to a dietitian to help you manage that. I think partly it's to do with the fact that obviously your symptoms improve, so you don't, not as much dyskinesia or tremor, so you reduce your energy output. But there is something else going on that actually stimulates a bit of the weight gain as well. So it is something to be aware of, and it is something to ask for help. So if you're gaining weight, if you've got any sort of binge eating style food addiction, because it's shown in the research that women with Parkinson's tend to have more sort of food addiction type binge eating than men with Parkinson's. And it's something that you should get on top on sooner rather than later, to talk to your doctor about and get referral to a dietitian to help you. It's not something to be ashamed of, or you just need help with it and to kind of manage around that better. Yeah.
All right, we need to wrap up now. So
okay, sorry, Sharon.
If you have more questions for Richelle, just hang on. We will, after we finish, you can stay on for a few minutes. So next slide, Ashlyn. So just a reminder, we have our peer-to-peer mentoring program. And if you newly diagnosed and want a mentor, if you have experience and want to be a mentor, please sign on to our site, go to the website, Twitchy Woman, and look at the peer support program for women, which is at the top. Next slide. And we can skip this. A bunch of us are going. We have a big group going. We have 27 women, I think, and care partners. This is part of Twitchy Women. We are meeting again next week because of my travel schedule. Everything's been screwed up between holidays and travel. So I'm sorry about we're not meeting regularly, but we will meet next week. We have a Purva Sawar. We'll talk about early PD rehabilitation diagnosed people with Parkinson's. And then I'm gone to the Congress for a couple of weeks. And then when I get back, Jake Kidney will be joining us from the Quiver, and which is an online magazine, which I know several of you are involved with. And it's for people with Parkinson's to share their writing, poetry, artwork, whatever. And then on July 23rd, we're going to have several of our women who are at the Congress joining us to talk about what they learned. So that'll be a fun morning. Let's go on to the next slide. I got an email this morning about the Speech Accessibility Project. We've advertised it before. They desperately need more women to participate. You can earn up to $180 by joining this. And the registration link is here. We will go ahead and put that in the chat for those of you who want it. And it will also be in the weekly newsletter. Next slide. Our book group was postponed until next week. Everyone who has signed up should have been notified. We will be meeting next week, not today, because the facilitator had a conflict today. She was unable to make it. And next slide. Two chat groups. I want to remind you, we have our Tuesday mornings with Shelley, and then Sunday mornings is Twitchies Without Partners. We had 3 women show up, join us this morning. They had a great conversation, and I'd love to see more of you join us on that group if you are single and dealing with Parkinson's. And I think that's it. Is there any more? That's it on this end.